Good evening and welcome to a special edition of To The Point. This evening we'll be looking into the American elections, quite important elections that affect the world at large. Who will be elected the coming U.S. president will be under discussion this evening. With us this evening is His Excellency Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. A pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure is mine.
Your Excellency, in the past, we used to sense that the American president wanted to market himself to his constituency. Now I feel that it's somehow an issue of political branding. I'm branding myself as this tough guy. I'm branding myself as an aggressor. I'm branding myself as pro this or that. Are you seeing this with the current candidates or in this Trump-Biden race or not?
Well, first of all, the presidential elections this year, 1 week from today,
Yes.
next Tuesday, is really, as many people in the United States believe, it's one of the most important presidential elections in the States since 1932, when the former President Franklin Roosevelt was elected against the Depression. And it's also the results are very consequential, not only for American democracy and the United States, but also for the whole world,
Yes.
Particularly in the Middle East and in Mediterranean and in North Africa. So I guess branding, President Trump during the last 4 years, his first term, did his best to portray himself as the defender of American interests abroad. And as a matter of fact, his slogan is to make America great again, MAGA. And this still is the motto or slogan of his campaign and of his presidency. And this is what garners a lot of support among Republicans and the grassroots Republicans. On the other hand, former Vice President Joe Biden is trying to portray himself as presidential, yes. As more open to the outside world, as an American statesman who would do his best to bring Americans together.
Yes.
So I think, yes, we can say that President Trump on the one hand and Mr. Joe Biden on the other hand are doing their best to brand themselves to appeal to their constituency. Speaking about constituency, I have the feeling that President Trump is more concerned about those who have supported him in 2016 who are still supporting him till today. But Mr. Joe Biden, on the other hand, is trying to appeal to all Americans. So this is...
so Trump is not trying to expand his market share, if we can put it that way. He doesn't feel it's necessary.
Following his campaign strategy,
yes.
in the last 2 months, my personal feeling, that he is trying to appeal to his support, his own constituency, which, by the way, does represent 40% of the American electorate. So 40% is not is really a big figure. And lately he is trying to open up to Latinos, to African Americans. So let's wait and see and what will happen next Tuesday, whether these strategies on the Republican side and the Democratic side would really appeal to a larger American constituencies.
Last time Trump was not really looking at the minorities. As a matter of fact, he had quite a few words that did not really hold salt with that part of the American voters or electorate. Do you think his stance towards minorities, and here I'm talking about African Americans, I'm talking about women, his statements were not very appealing last time. Is he planning to go for that part of votes, or is he putting it on the side?
Last time, you mean 2016?
Yes.
Well, to begin with, this is late in the game now. I guess voters have already made up their mind.
Yes.
The undecided, the independent in the United States, I guess they have now a pretty good idea to whom they want to whom they will vote. And one indicator of this enthusiasm and this kind of determination is the fact that early voting in the United States today reached 66,400,000 votes. This is something unseen, unheard of in American presidential elections. And American watchers do believe that this indicates that next Tuesday the turnout will be unprecedented also, not only compared to 2000.
Why is it this time that the number of people interested in going out and casting their votes is increasing? What changed that is motivating people to hit the polling stations?
Well, we have newcomers. We are speaking about 14 million new voters compared to 2016. Okay. And these 14 million new voters could make a lot of difference in the elections. Secondly, I guess the polarization that was caused by the way President Trump and his administration dealt with racial issues, for instance, is another reason why this huge turnout. And then, of course, the pandemic, the COVID-19, and the high death rate in the United States because of this pandemic, plus the economic situation in the United States. All these factors combined really are pushing people, are pushing Americans to go and vote. On the other hand, during the last 4 years, there have been many interrogation marks on the impact of the Trump administration of the American democracy and on the working of federal institutions and American politics. So I guess the American electorate is really mobilized to vote. It's a vote for the future. Yes. I would call it that. It's not a vote for Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden, but rather it's a vote for the United States in the coming few years. Some people believe that another 4 years of a Trump administration, that would be too much to bear as far as the American institutions, political institutions are concerned and American politics are concerned. On the other hand, others believe that going back to Obama years policies, whether economic, Obamacare,
which is a continuation in Biden.
They believe that it would be a continuation of the Obama years, and they were against many policies of the Obama administrations. So this is the reason why we are witnessing such high mobilization on the part of the American electorate.
What about the young generation? Because now the trend is to really look and respect the youth worldwide. What about the young generation? Who do you think will be appealing to the young minds here?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer because we have three variables, very important variables, that would weigh on the elections. We have education, the level of education.
Yes.
We have gender, and we have race. So these factors combined would have definitely a major impact on the results next Tuesday, madam. When we speak about education, for instance, white educated or white uneducated. The white uneducated would vote for Mr. Trump. The educated white would vote for Mr. Biden.
Okay.
So going back to the 14 million new voters, newcomers in this presidential election, we have to see how many of them are college educated, how many of them haven't been to college, for instance, how many of them are African Americans, how many of them are Latinos, and then gender. Gender will play a great role in the elections, particularly the white suburban wives. White suburban wives are angry at Mr. Trump.
Yes.
And if they, if on election day, they would go and vote, probably, according to American watchers, probably they would cast their votes for Mr. Biden.
Mr. Biden.
So we see here a very complicated political map in the United States today. So and this makes it very difficult, at least for me, to try to guess who would carry the day on November 3rd.
The fact that some people misread the polls, the fact that the polls now are more in favor of Biden, for example, than Trump. And here I would like to remind our viewers that in 2016 they were in favor of Hillary than Trump, and yet Trump came to office. Are they necessarily reflective of who will hit the White House?
Well, this is a very good point. Pollsters in the United States have learned a lot from their predictions in 2016. So this time around, their questions and their sampling of voters, whom to ask, for instance, whom to poll, has varied. Now, in 2016, they concentrated on white educated males. But now they are aware that they have to broaden the samples. They are polling in terms of education, in terms of gender, in terms of race. So they believe, the pollsters in the United States, they believe that they are in a better position today to predict the results. As we talk today, the margin between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden is 8.4 in favor of Mr. Biden. So if we take into account, let's say, sampling error, if we take into account any unexpected turn events, so I'm speaking about 3% or 4%.
There is a margin of error.
There is a margin of error. So still, Mr. Biden enjoys a 4-point lead
in the race.
But of course, in the last 2 days, yesterday, for instance, President Trump made 3 appearances in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a major battleground state in the coming elections. They have, as you may know, madam, they have 20 electoral votes, and
has a hefty weight.
Observers in the United States believe that whoever would win next November must carry Pennsylvania.
Yes. Not only do polls affect the U.S. elections, but also the debates carry quite a large weight. We'll be taking a look at the following report, and we'll continue our discussion with our distinguished gentleman right after this, so please stay with us.
In the last debate before the elections, American presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden touched on a number of topics, most notably the corona crisis, racism, foreign policy, immigration, accusations of corruption, and climate change. US President Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Biden faced off in a second and last debate which was characterized by a constructive tone and relative respect, but did not change much in the election's equation. Trump appeared to be lagging behind his opponent in opinion polls, wanting to project a more disciplined image after a loud and chaotic first debate. Biden attacked the US president on his management of the crisis resulting from COVID-19, expecting that the country would face a dark winter due to the pandemic that has claimed more than 222,000 lives in the United States to date. Trump responded 3 weeks after contracting the virus by saying, "We are fighting it very firmly. We have a vaccine coming. It is ready. It will be announced in the coming weeks," accusing Biden of seeking to close the country again. In a lively exchange of racial discrimination, Joe Biden said that the sitting US president is pouring fuel on every racial fire. Meanwhile, Trump responded, "I'm the least racist person in this room," when asked about the criminal justice protests in the country. For his part, Trump referred to Biden's political history of supporting laws leading to high incarceration rates, especially among men of color. Biden admitted he made a mistake in supporting those bills in the past and pledged to scrap prison sentences for non-violent drug crimes and focus on rehabilitation.
Welcome back. With us on the phone is Dr. Abdelmenem Saeed, writer and political analyst. Dr. Abdelmenem, can you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
First of all, would like to know, who do you think will be in the White House next week, Trump or Biden? And how does Trump's foreign policy thus far worked in helping him or not helping him in going into the White House?
Well, that's too much for one question to answer. Let me put it this way. Next week we will not find an American president elected because there is over 50 million male voting that they will start looking at it after, November 3rd. So expectation that it will take some time. It might also, there will be follow-up on that sometime in terms of questions about, that's what at least Trump have said, that he questioned the integrity of the election.
Yes.
And as such, it means there will be probably a situation like the one we faced before in the election on 2000 between Al Gore and George W. Bush.
Yes.
So probably it will be much more complicated than we think. However, we got to examine both major candidates to look at the foreign policies of both of them. I want to make a cautionary remark first, that it is not easy to switch backward what happened during Trump era. In a sense that Trump was representing a right-wing kind of a wave that sees America is not taking a fair deal of its external relations, a kind of a wish and also an attempt to implement is for American withdrawal from the world and having a very calculated use of force.
Yes.
It's based basically on more participation and more financing, whether the allies are European or Asian or on the Gulf. So Trump methods will not be easy to just depart and come back probably unless it is a few things like related to global warming, the Paris Accord. If Biden won, probably he can go in some of the issues that are away from the issues that still splitting people in the United States. I want to say also that there are legacy for Trump will be on the Constitutional Court. If he left, he will be leaving it with a massive majority for the conservatives.
Yes.
6-3. He also appointed more than 300 federal judges in different states. So, Trump probably will be with us even if he left, which I probably find it not certain until now.
Why is he really referring a lot to the rigging of voting, which is an issue which he suffered even in the elections? Why is he is this a preempting point? I mean, why is he making a lot of emphasis and doubting the credibility of the elections, so to speak?
Well, Trump based his strategy since 2016 on questioning what's called in the United States the Eastern establishment or the democratic liberal institution, which is not anymore on the East. It is also in the West, in California and Washington State and Oregon. So it is those who are basically liberal and blue states, Democrats, and who are very dominant in major universities, major research centers, major companies, and he directed his speech to white people who are usually not attaining university degrees, and they are concentrated on what they call it the Rust Belt. And those with traditional kind of industries, like cars, like ships, like iron and steel, and the likes, and not states that's based on more advanced and Silicon Valley technologies.
Yes.
However, he is trying to put this base of voters in his support by raising the level of threat for them that the establishment is really fraud, that it is willing and capable of rigging the elections. So that's one way of mobilizing his base.
Yes.
And also questioning the abilities of the other side.
Okay. Dr. Abdelminam Said, thank you very much for your fruitful input. Your Excellency, a few days ago, some Gulf countries started normalizing relations with Israel. How is the Trump foreign policy in the Middle East going to affect his elections, or will it not have an effect?
Historically speaking, foreign policy, save in periods of wars, in which the United States was a major party, like the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, for instance, save these periods, times of crisis, foreign policy issues haven't weighed in on the outcome of elections in the United States. Mainly American voters are interested in the economy. Economy is a major factor in how Americans do vote.
Yes.
The example that comes to mind is the George Bush father and President Clinton. In 1990, President Bush father, despite the fact that he was responsible in liberating Kuwait from the Iraqi occupation, this was a major foreign policy achievement, plus the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. But despite this, he was not re-elected for a second term. So I don't think that the major breakthroughs that the Trump administration made in the Arab-Israeli relations
will affect the election.
Will have a significant
What
impact.
about the China war? Because we have the US-China trade war, and he has made quite a vicious enemy of China since he came to office. And now even the COVID-19 China war with the US. Will this affect his him being re-elected in the office? They have very, very bad relations, so to speak, right now.
If we go back to the second debate, the second presidential debate, we remember that the only foreign policy topic that was brought up was China. Of course, China has become a major problem for American foreign policy. And the Trump administration has made China a scapegoat for some difficulties, some ills in the American economy. And as a matter of fact, today the American Secretary of State is in New Delhi with the Defense Minister in talks with India, and the objective of these talks, the long-term objective, is to contain the rise of Chinese power in the Indo-Pacific region. But I think that the two main issues will be uppermost on the American voter, whether in the early votes or early voters or next Tuesday. First, the pandemic, the COVID-19.
Which is really wearing them down.
Yes, and secondly, the economy. These are, personally speaking, the two major issues that will be uppermost on the minds of Americans.
With us on the line is Dr. Samir Raghib, President of the Arab Foundation for Strategic Studies. Dr. Raghib, can you hear us?
Thank you for having me. I hear you.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Raghib. Can you tell us the way Trump has been handling the issues in the Middle East? Do you think they will weigh in the elections or not, especially the normalization of relations with Israel?
Yes. For the Middle East is not of the first priorities of the American voter. Even for Jews. A matter of enhancing the relation between, or normalizing the relation between Israel and some Arab countries is a matter of Trump try to send a message that his first slogan is America first, but he managed to make success in the international arena, especially for the Middle East. But for the domestic affair is the first priority for the taxes, the employment. But Middle East is not in the internal America is in their top priority.
What about the issue with Iran? Today, Iran officials said they would welcome a return to the 2015 nuclear deal. Do you think that the position of the US candidate, the upcoming presidential candidates on the issue with Tehran will affect who will be in office?
I think Trump tries to send a message that the joint comprehensive plan of actions is a disaster for America. But the reality reflects that the threat from Iran to its neighbor and even for America is increased after Trump pull out from or surrender from one side, from the 5+1 treaty. He tried to sense that the Iranian can threat America. Iran has a humble rocket program that not capable to reach American land. The threat for the Gulf country and the Eastern Europe the main threat for its neighbors. He not managed to stop Iranian threat for its neighbor. He failed to make a reconciliation with Iran or make Iran convert to a normal country. He must, the other administration managed to use the stick and the carrot. But Trump depends on the stick, no carrot, for Iran or South Korea. Also the Iran arena situated in the international files that not increase Trump position or make him make success in managing these files.
Dr. Samir Raib, thank you very much for joining us on To The Point. Your Excellency, the Iranian file, which is quite a sticky file, the position of Iran and the fact that it wants a return back to the nuclear deal, will we see a honeymoon phase between US and Iran, or will it not make a difference?
Well, I guess if President Trump would be re-elected, he has already said that he would be willing to reach an agreement with Iran. As far as Mr. Biden is concerned, for sure he was the vice president during the Obama years when this agreement was signed. The Iranian nuclear agreement was signed in July 2015.
Yes.
So he firmly believes in the significant benefits of having this agreement with Iran. So the two President Trump, former Vice President Biden, are for some kind of entente with Iran. The question is on which terms, and whether Iran
will their terms differ. Be Biden or Trump, will their terms?
I guess what the United States wants from Iran is that it stops funding what they call pro-Iranian militias in the Middle East and in the Arab Peninsula.
Yes.
Secondly, to stop the development of its ballistic missile programs, and thirdly, to agree to completely stop its nuclear activities that could be used for military ends sometime down the line. So these are the three conditions that the United States, whether Mr. Trump would be re-elected or Mr. Biden wins, that the United States would try to see. The difference maybe in Iran would, of course, ask first that the United States lessens its sanctions. It's very tough sanctions that have been imposed by the Trump administration.
Crippling sanctions.
I beg your pardon?
Crippling sanctions.
Yeah, very, very. Now what? I guess the Biden administration would take a step on this path. If Mr. Trump remains in the Oval Office, I think that he would probably maintain these sanctions at least until the new agreement would take shape.
The American street had a few words on who they would want in office, and we managed to capture some sense or some essence of what they want in office in this report, and we'll then continue our discussion.
Over here, where the city part of Scranton is, everybody's for Biden. But once you go out maybe 10-15 minutes towards the farms, a lot of Trump supporters over there. But it is Joe Biden's town, so I believe it's more Biden.
I think a lot of people really like Donald Trump. They kind of don't say that a lot, but I think the trend is going in his direction. I think the lockdown really helped him out around here. We're kind of frustrated with that a little bit.
Biden wouldn't be my ideal candidate, probably. It's just that he's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a good person as far as social and other concerns. I think he's done a few good things, but the bad things that he's done and said, not even as president, but just as a human being, greatly turned me off.
Chemotherapy is necessary for cancer. Trump is chemotherapy. These people are socialist, communist, pieces of no good excrement. We will accept whatever Trump is. Better a jerk than a communist.
Welcome back. I think this goes more in support of what you were saying, that the American constituency is more concerned with local politics rather than international politics. COVID-19, very, very crippling, very severe conditions, very severe after effects worldwide. I mean, Europe right now is really suffering. Has the Trump administration suffered at the hands of COVID-19, in your opinion?
Yeah, definitely. Till March, mid-March 2020, there, at the time, there had been no doubt that President Trump would be re-elected in November 2020. But after almost now 6 months of COVID-19 and the high numbers of death in the United States and the cases of contamination by the COVID-19, I guess yesterday the United States reached 83,000 cases in one single day. I guess this has had a very negative impact on the image of the Trump administration on the one hand, and on the image of President Trump on the way he conducts business. Plus the fact that there is a marked difference between the opinions of the scientists and President Trump and his administration on the way to deal with the pandemic. And of course, many people in the United States have faulted President Trump personally in minimizing the dangers of the pandemic, and some hold him responsible for the high death figures in the United States, which has now surpassed, the figure has surpassed now 200,000 Americans who died because of the COVID-19. So definitely, if President Trump is not re-elected, the major reason would be the way they handled the COVID-19 crisis.
One thing that we noticed is that the American rank and file is very much divided. Who, in your opinion, will be able to reunify this rank and file? Because really, once the state is divided, it is weak. Who, in your opinion, is better fit to reunite the Americans?
Definitely, it's not Mr. Trump if he is re-elected. I guess the chances are, if Mr. Joe Biden would be elected president, he is in a better position to really bring all Americans, to try to bring all Americans together. It won't be easy. It won't be easy. American society is highly polarized, and some people believe that the Trump victory in the elections in 2016 was a reflection of this polarization.
Yes.
Others, of course, have a different view. They say they believe that Mr. Trump, during the last 4 years, has deepened this polarization. So I think, to answer your question, probably Mr. Biden is better placed to try to heal the divisions in American society between whites, non-whites, whites. I guess he will be, to a certain extent, he would try to be like former President Obama, bringing Americans together regardless of race, gender, or level of education. So, of course, the United States needs someone who can really bring this great nation together.
Worth noting, as we speak, according to statistics that have just been published, the coronavirus count in the United States thus far, and worth noting that it's quite early in the day in most of the states in America. We have over 56,000 cases today and over 800 fatalities, and again I repeat, the day is not over yet. It is still early in the day. The red and blue have always divided the map, the American map, so to speak, and some states like Pennsylvania, as the gentleman was saying, it really plays a very, very heavy weight. We'll be taking a quick look at the states that really play a key figure in the American elections, and then continue our discussion right after this. Welcome back. Do you think this time certain states in the United States will shift direction? In other words, it was sort of clear that some states are either red or blue, kind of. And the question is, will there be a drastic change this time, that a state you would assume always votes Republican and it ends up being Democratic, or vice versa?
Well, I guess the question is about what we call the swing states.
Yes.
And the swing states do play a great role in determining who wins in the electoral college. So, and that's the reason why we have seen both President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden visiting some swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Florida, for instance. There are two swing states that really, whoever whoever wants to win the elections next Tuesday should carry: Florida and Pennsylvania.
Who do you think they'll go? Can you get a sense of where is Florida going and where is Pennsylvania?
In both states, Mr. Biden is leading. But in Florida, it was a very low margin. In Pennsylvania, the
even
margin,
though Florida has a lot of the elderly, the more conservative elderly in
yes,
Florida.
and the elderly voted for Mr. Trump in
Yes.
2016. This year, and because of the pandemic,
will they vote again?
they would vote, but not necessarily for Mr. Trump. So Florida has 29 electors in the electoral college, and then it's like New York, and Pennsylvania has 20. And these two states do follow the principle of winners take all. So just imagine that, whoever wins of the two candidates in these two swing states, then he has 49 electors on his side. So the major battlegrounds today in the United States are the swing states, the Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Florida, and then Nevada. So and I guess both candidates are visiting during this week some of those swing states in order to garner much support.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Hussein Haridi, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, madam.
Always a pleasure. And to you, the viewers, we wish you a very pleasant evening. We'll same time next week, and we will have live coverage as it happens in the United States. Who is going to hit the White House? We'll continue with that coverage next week. Until then, good night.